his pawn. Rook c1, rook open file, f6 defending this pawn. Queen c2, queen e8. And now, again, knight e4 now. And white's slightly better here. More space on the queen side, a target on c6 that he can eventually get at by like a knight c5 idea, and a knight b7, also b5 might be happening. So white's slightly better here. So it's another possibility, but black chose a5. So now the question is, after b5, obviously, knight d4, question is this pawn safe? Is that pawn safe? And if it is, why? If it's not, why? So you guys are pretty clever. Pretty clever. So indeed, if knight takes pawn, bishop f6, and f4 cannot be played because knight b3 just wins. Now I'm threatening this. Fork. So knight b3 wins. So you can't play f4. So you have to play knight c4. And then knight c4, bc4, bishop c4, and black is much better here. This is not what white wants. This is not what white wants. And knight takes d4 is bad because of ed4, knight a4, bishop d5, knight b6, cb6, a4, bg2, king g2, queen d5 check, king g1, bishop c5. And now black's better because these rooks are going to come on this pawn, and black has a spatial advantage in the center because of this d4 pawn. And this pawn is a backward pawn on an open file. So black has an advantage here. Okay, so you don't want to take that knight on d4. So, given that those two moves are not good, what should white play here? Very good, guys. Very good. So knight d2 is indeed the thematic move and the correct move. Okay, a little trick. What happens if knight d5? So this is the normal move for black in this position, or in these types of positions. But what does white do here if knight d5? Nope, I just showed why not, ace rook. Get your head in the game. So what does white play here? e3, I win your queen and your rook and your everything. Yeah, but your queen's trapped. I like your queen. Free queen. Thanks. Thanks. So come on, guys. Thought you guys are good at chess tempo. White to move and win. White to move and win. E1 saves? You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure? Where's that queen going? Pray tell. Sure about that? Don't think that saves. So, well, let's look for good moves. So XE, again, knight d5, bishop d5, e3. Again, you want to lose your queen? I don't understand what's going on here. What is going on here? You like losing queens? I mean, okay. So, the actual answer is bishop takes. So the point is bishop takes e3. Knight's in the trap. Knight's in the trap. And now if knight e6, e4, bishop's in the trap. But bishop's in the trap. And if knight f5, e4 wins. So a little finesse. A little finesse. But bishop takes knight. So anyway, knight d2 is indeed the correct move. So if knight d2, then probably c6. Try to cut down this guy. And you can either play take, bishop b2, threatening this, or you can just play a4. And again, you're threatening this. And white's slightly better. But white didn't play knight d2. White tried the interesting bishop b2 right away. So now, what does black do? It's the English. Thanks, Ace. So, problem is, if f6, knight d2, and now this is even a worse variation of what we just showed you, or what I just showed you. And if bishop b3, simply queen c1. And then knight c2, rook b1, f6, knight d2, and now all these pieces are kind of cramped. So you have to actually reposition this knight ASAP. So the right move is actually knight b3. So kind of forestalling knight d2. So rook b1 forced, obviously. Got to move the rook because I'm threatening it. Okay, now f6, because now this pawn's attacked. So now knight d2 again. And now what? Okay, well, I'll give you two moves. Should black play here, or should black play here? take or knight c5? Which is better? Dun 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 dun. So the correct answer is that knight takes knight is a strategic mistake, and knight c5 is actually correct. So the idea is knight c5, a4, rook c8, good move. Why? Because you want to play c6. So queen c2, c6, good move. Take, take. Bishop a3, knight d5. And now these pieces are all quite active. And black should be equal here. Like this pawn, these pawns are weak, but it's very hard for white to get at them. And black has a more of a central presence with his pieces and his pawns. So this should be equal, even though he has a couple structural weaknesses. So knight c5 is indeed correct, but black was not so clever. He took. All right. So he took thinking that he could play knight c4 and take this, right? Because he can't take because of the pin. So queen c1, take, queen takes. Now this pawn's attacked, gotta play rook b8. So what should white play here? Well, b6, c6, and then you can never really get any of the pawns. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful. So white played a4. The reason being is he doesn't want to allow black to play a4 and bishop b3, kind of blockading all his queenside play. Because say he plays like rook fc1, a4. Now if knight takes, he can play rook a8, and then this pawn. So if the knight moves back, now bishop takes pawn, wins the exchange. So you have to be careful about stuff like that. So he just wants to shore up everything before he continued on with his plan. So rook b8, a4. And now black should probably play b6 here, just to shore up his queenside. And white would be better, but it is quite hard to get at this pawn, because this bishop is on the wrong color, and this knight will have a hard time getting at this pawn. So white is better, but it would have been harder nut to crack than what black played, which is queen d4. So what here? What here?